What's up everybody? Everyone loves Echo, right? She's a friendly, lovable robot who just wants to help bring humans and Omnics together. She fights for good, was built by a peace-loving scientist, and oh my god, she turns into your loved ones and murders you as them. While thus far, Echo has been portrayed as one of the good guys that Overwatch needs to save the world, there's some not-so-subtle clues in her character and backstory which hint that she may end up falling to the dark side. So today, I'm going to examine all the evidence behind this theory, suggesting that Echo might not remain on Team Overwatch for very long. This is Master Ian Gamer, and before we get into it, I just want to remind you to subscribe and backstab that bell icon to both help out my channel in these trying times and keep you up to date with all future Overwatch news and content. But now, let's examine Echo and her imminent dark descent. Looking at Echo's origin story, we know that she was created by the late Dr. Mina Liao to be a multi-purpose Omnic who could fill any role necessary when on the field of battle. Someone gets hurt? Boom, medic. Need something built? Boom, engineer. However, Echo's actual AI, under orders from Jack Morrison, was supposed to be fairly simple. Fearing that she would go rogue like others during the Omnic crisis, Echo was supposed to mainly serve as a support tool to be used by human Overwatch agents, and thus have little agency and freedom of her own. However, much to everyone's disappointment, Dr. Liao didn't make Echo a support, and instead secretly gave her an incredibly advanced AI, which could learn and adapt through observing those around her. Simply by being in the lab with Mina, Echo adopted her voice and personality as she grew, much like a child imitating her parents. Dr. Liao did all this to push her own agenda of bridging the gap between Omnics and humans. With so much controversy in the Overwatch universe over whether Omnics have souls and what sort of rights they deserve, Liao strived to show the world once and for all that artificial life could be just as human as a human. And Echo would be the one to prove that, even if it meant taking dangerous liberties with her AI and operating behind Morrison's back. But having failed before and being at least partially responsible for the horrors of the Omnic crisis, how can we be so sure that Liao's Echo project won't end the same way? Of everyone within Overwatch, very few knew of Echo's true purpose and capabilities. One of these was Jesse McCree, who was often tasked with guarding the scientist and her work. He must not have been very good at it though, because at some point before Overwatch's downfall, Liao was killed in an attack on an Overwatch facility. With the project's head now deceased, Overwatch decided to shut down the Echo project entirely. Jack Morrison, presumably still concerned with the safety of the project, even without knowing of her true capabilities, placed Echo in quarantine for a number of years, until eventually McCree released her in the Reunion animated short. If Dr. Liao's secret shady work on Echo wasn't enough to make you wary of her creation, the risks of her being an adaptive AI are blatantly addressed in multiple story pieces. Her bio on the official Play Overwatch website, as well as the Overwatch blog article published upon her release, both address the fact that it's unclear what Echo will do or become now that she's free. With McCree having released her into the world without anyone to keep tabs on her ongoing development, who's to say that she won't pick up a few of humanity's less admirable habits? The ideologies of characters like Doomfist or Moira might be a little too appealing to the young mind of an impressionable Omnic. While we see that Echo has successfully convened with the newly reformed Overwatch in Zero Hour, how do we know she won't encounter other influential characters on the road ahead? If nothing else, Echo could easily stand as a point of contention within the newly reformed Overwatch organization. Given how wary of Echo Jack Morrison and many other old Overwatch members were, even without knowing what she was truly capable of, her freedom to roam and adapt unchecked may not sit well with everyone. Given that McCree is the only living character we know of who truly understands Echo's capabilities, do Winston, Tracer, Mercy, and the others even know what they're dealing with? For all we know, they may still see her as just a valuable multi-tool and are blissfully ignorant of what she's truly capable of. Shifting gears slightly, another major point to bring up regarding Echo's risk of turning evil is the uncanny impression she gives off to the player. In terms of our perspective, Echo is, ironically, the creepiest and least human feeling of all the Omnic characters on the roster. Aside from Echo, most notable Omnics are portrayed as being essentially human. Blizzard has never explained how Omnics work within the Overwatch universe or why they possess self-awareness, but we as the players just accept them as being more or less people. We wave away any questions about it due to Overwatch being a video game set in a sci-fi universe with sentient robots. We can just assume that some kind of science magic is at play. However, we can't just wave it away for Echo because Blizzard very specifically calls her functionality into question. The fact that her entire personality is just an echo of the people and things around her is placed front and center with her character. And because of that, we, the players, are made very aware of the questionable validity of her having a true personality or soul. Now, I'll acknowledge that this is likely an at least somewhat subjective take on how Echo feels as a character. I'm sure many people won't be fazed by this one bit, but for me, being aware of the artificial method by which Echo is capable of presenting herself as human makes her feel very inhuman. If Zenyatta were to greet me and give me some enlightened wisdom, I'd take it as if a wise man had just spoken to me. But if Echo were to say the same, all I see is a hollow robot trying to play human, simply because we've been told how she works. Echo see, Echo do. If she's kind towards children, it's not because she feels in her heart that it's the right thing to do, it's because she saw someone else doing it and simply copied their behavior. This is especially true when it comes to her ultimate and the ability to fully duplicate any other being. While it's a fantastic gameplay mechanic, it also raises some rather big ethical questions in the story department. I'm certainly not alone in saying that any entity which can duplicate your personality and appearance is at the very least unsettling. So despite being the one Omnic who was specifically designed to bridge the gap between man and machine, she somehow feels even less human than a walking minigun. At least the minigun has an inherent affection for birds. Bastion's friendship with Ganymede does far more to humanize him than anything Echo has done with her blank, emotionless, mockingly fake face. However, I suspect that this all may in fact be intentional on Blizzard's part. On its own, I'd be a bit skeptical of this being the case, but when taken alongside the blurbs we've had about the uncertainty of how Echo's AI will evolve now that she's set free, I think Blizzard very specifically wants us as the players to feel wary of Echo's character. While at face value she looks like a happy, friendly robot, we're also aware of the hollow algorithm which projects that appearance. The Overwatch writers want us to consider her capabilities and the possibility that, without the guidance of Liao, she could easily end up taking a dark path in the future. But beyond Echo's adoption of evil making for an exciting twist, it's actually a necessary step in her story if she's ever to become the person she was always meant to be. You see, so far it's suggested that Echo has only really been exposed to the good sides of Overwatch and humanity. Dr. Liao showed her how to be kind and caring, and somehow or another she learned to engage in combat, but there's no evidence to suggest that she's ever experienced any inner conflict of her own. Having spent most of her life locked away in a laboratory, she's likely never been exposed to anyone or anything truly evil. Even when being field tested by Overwatch strike teams, she was restrained from utilizing her full freedom and potential, so she's seemingly never had to make any real independent decisions. Simply put, of course Echo is going to be good, when so far she's only ever been able to copy other good people. This says nothing of her being a conscious entity, as she's never had to make a choice of whether to be good or bad. So far, she's nothing more than the soulless multi-tool Morrison wanted her to be by mimicking the good actions she's been exclusively exposed to. Even Bastion has gone through the conflict of having to choose, and him breaking free of his original programming is largely what makes him appear at least somewhat human. But Echo has yet to go through any sort of humanizing trial like that. And this is where evil comes into play. Only after being exposed to both good and evil characters will Echo ever have a chance to truly grow and become a person. Once she's absorbed multiple, vastly different perspectives, she'll not only be capable of making her own decisions, but forced to. She'll have to choose between contradictory ideologies and actions, and only after making these decisions, regardless of whether they align her more with Overwatch or Talon, will Echo transcend being more than merely an Echo. Then, she will finally be her own unique person by having made her own unique choices. So that's why Echo has to become evil, or at the very least absorb some evil in order to become human. Whether she sides with Overwatch or Talon, though, will ultimately be up to her. And all this, of course, is assuming that Blizzard actually goes somewhere with Echo's character in the overarching story. Given their track record, that's more than a little up in the air, but we can always dream of Overwatch characters undergoing actual complex development, so in the meantime, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Echo turning evil in the comments down below. Subscribe, backstab that bell, follow me on Twitter at MasterIanGamer, and check out my Discord server to keep up with all future Overwatch news and other content. You can also support my channel as a member by hitting that join button down below to unlock some dope rewards like the people you see here on screen. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.